Excuse me. Well, good morning. This is Ian R. Crane. It's the morning of Tuesday, the 8th of May, 2018. And I'm standing in the grounds here. In fact, I'm in the secret garden of the Hallwood House Hotel in Buckinghamshire. And over the last 4 days, I've hosted the Alternative View Conference, AV9. And it's been a remarkably humbling experience, because whatever it is that we think we're fighting, there is always other challenges and other people who have picked up the gauntlet to do the right thing on behalf of humanity. And the range of speakers over the weekend, it would take me a couple of hours to give the lowdown on each of the presentations, but I want to draw attention to a couple this morning, because obviously we're fighting fracking, and with some degree of success. 5.5 years now since the moratorium was lifted in the UK, and still to be a frack. Well, obviously there's a risk right now that Preston New Road might go down that route, but never give up. We're still looking for that Achilles heel. But for those people who are absolutely engrossed in the single issue, we have to actually recognize that there are other issues that are equally and arguably in some cases even more important. And one of my speakers, who actually couldn't speak for legal reasons this weekend, so I delivered his presentation. The reason he couldn't speak is because he has been persecuted relentlessly for the past 5 years without any judicial process whatsoever. He has had his bank accounts frozen, and in fact his partner was in court in London on Friday to face an extradition hearing. And that extradition hearing was brought under the guise of a European arrest warrant by the French. So this heinous crime that they have arguably, according to the establishment, committed, which has led to their bank accounts being shut down, them having to report on police bail every week, and run the risk of being extradited to France, where you can be held in remand or on remand for up to 2.4 years. And some 17,000 prisoners in France on remand commit suicide every single year. And we think France is a developed and mature culture. Their crime is to have developed an effective treatment for cancer. And I have to choose my words very, very carefully, because under the 1939 Cancer Act, it is illegal for anyone in the UK to claim that there is any alternative to cancer treatments than radiotherapy and chemotherapy, which net the pharmaceutical industry some £90,000 per patient. Yet there are proven to be a number of effective alternatives. One, of course, is cannabis oil in conjunction with diet. And the other one is GC-MAF in conjunction with diet. Now, I suspect that a very few people watching this are actually aware of GC-MAF. And I actually have some perhaps responsibility for this situation, because the individual who is now being persecuted actually attended a conference in Ghent, in Belgium, in 2009, where I was talking about the pernicious Codex Alimentarius agenda, the global agenda being driven by the pharmaceutical industry and the likes of Monsanto and Cargill to effectively eradicate all natural farming and to abolish all natural healthcare. And in the course of that presentation, I made a throwaway observation. I said, has anybody here heard of GC-MAF? And of course, nobody put their hand up. And I made the observation, one-liner, that here was a proven very effective treatment for cancer, which is being suppressed relentlessly by the pharmaceutical industry. And there was an English guy in the audience who was skeptical, so he went away and did some research, and what he discovered truly shocked him. And he decided that he would devote his life to bringing GC-MAF into the market to give literally tens or hundreds of thousands of people an opportunity to extend their life and indeed actually make a full recovery from cancer. So he and his partner set up the laboratories and they produced GC-MAF. Well, to cut a long story short, those laboratories in various countries around Europe were raided by the police, in some cases with machine guns, and basically the employees in these facilities were treated like criminals, and a number of them are facing charges in their respective countries. Such is the power of the establishment working on behalf of the pharmaceutical industry. So here in the UK, GC-MAF, of course, is not exactly on the tips of everybody's tongue. And anybody who has lost somebody to cancer, which includes me, my sister unfortunately succumbed a few years ago after taking chemo and radiotherapy, and obviously, ultimately, arguably, that's what killed her, not necessarily the cancer. Had she had the opportunity of having access to GC-MAF, there's a very, very good possibility, nay, probability, that she would survive. And with cancer cases increasing in the Western world, then every one of us should be concerned as to why the 1939 Cancer Act cannot be challenged. This is enforced in the UK by the MHRA, the Medicines and Healthcare Regulatory Authority, which is headed up by a sociopath who goes by the name of Gerald Heddle. And guess what? Mr. Heddle, as head of the MHRA, also sits on the boards of certain pharmaceutical companies. So no conflicts of interest there, eh? So, as I always make the observation, please do not take anything I say at face value. Just as this gentleman didn't when I made that observation back in 2009 in Ghent. He went away and did his own research, and because of his efforts between 2009 and when he was shut down in 2013, many people around the world, and there are many testimonies to this, are able to continue to live normal lives as a result of GC-MAF. So I'm going to post some links under this video. It might not happen today because we're packing down here from the AV9 conference, but within the next day or so, I will post some links. And you can see the magnitude of the persecution. And of course, this attempt to extradite is the fear tactic, but it's a very real fear tactic to try to destroy anybody who threatens the monopoly of Big Pharma. So humanity is under a multi-dimensional attack right now. We are facing a corporatocracy, a technocratic elite parasites who believe that basically humanity are little more than cattle, which is why I constantly refer to their attitude being that of those who run a fiefdom. In their opinion, they are the rightful rulers of a planetary fiefdom, and they certainly do not have humanity's best interests at heart. So later this year, in fact in a couple of months, there will be another extradition hearing. And of course these extradition hearings are generally heard in very small courtrooms where hardly anybody can actually be in attendance to scrutinize and observe. We have to change this. So as and when the dates become available, then I will certainly make sure that those dates are publicised, and I would ask that anybody else who becomes aware of those dates to do the same. It's essential that we start educating the British public, who many of them have lost someone near and dear to cancer. And when they find out that Big Pharma is deliberately suppressing a proven effective treatment, then just maybe we might be able to bring sufficient pressure to bear to get the 1939 Cancer Act repealed. Now, a few years ago, Lord Maurice Saatchi, who lost his wife to cancer, made an attempt to get legislation put in place where alternatives to chemo and radiotherapy could be actually considered and certainly offered as an alternative. That was shut down in a proverbial heartbeat. So we have the establishment looking to protect the profits, the outrageous and obscene profits of the pharmaceutical industry. Another presentation that moved people to tears was that of former Detective Constable John Wedger of the Metropolitan Police. And John Wedger first came to speak to me back in 2009 at AV4. And at the time he was still on the police payroll, but he just needed to share what he was going through as he was trying to expose the systemic child abuse and child prostitution within the care system within the Metropolitan Police area. And he told me at the time that he had been working on an investigation into the London care facilities, and he had established beyond any reasonable doubt that there was indeed systemic child abuse and establishment-sponsored child prostitution from within the care home system. And he wrote a report, and he went away for a short vacation, and when he came back, his commanding officer called him, sat him down, and said, "John, that report you wrote before you went away, it doesn't exist. And you will never mention again that this is what you were working on." Well, for the past 9 years, Detective Constable John Wedger attempted to work through establishment channels to raise awareness. And anybody who put their head above the parapet to help him, they got destroyed. But John persisted, and eventually he managed to get himself released from the police, just literally 2 or 3 months ago. And he was able to share his experiences here at AV9. What moved the audience, many members of the audience, to tears was his account of dealing with these young people who are treated literally as a sexual toy. And there being a total lack of support from within the care system and from within the establishment to help them in any way, shape or form, because they were actually running these paedophile rings. So John Wedger has been giving interviews, certainly on UK Column. He's recently done a walk from, I believe it was Manchester to London, to try and raise awareness of this. And of course Mike Veal, the former Chief Constable of Wiltshire, who I believe has now moved to Cleveland, also launched an investigation into establishment paedophilia, and in particular the role of Ted Heath, the historical role of Ted Heath and his involvement in establishment paedophilia. And of course the establishment put the full weight of attack on him, dismissing a chief constable as a fantasist. Well, as is always the case, John Wedger encourages people to do their own research. And this is a very, very brave individual. And the two people that I mentioned previously are extremely brave individuals, because, we do what we do, I do what I do, from outside of any establishment control. I'm not on anybody's payroll. Nobody pays this individual to call any particular tune. But these people were working inside the establishment, running their own business, and thought they were doing the right thing for the people who they thought they were working for, only to find that, no, the ruling parasites don't want people to know that there are effective treatments, possibly even cures, dare I say, for cancer. And the establishment certainly doesn't want to know that they endorse systemic child abuse. Now, later this week, I should be heading back to North Nottinghamshire to the Misson Springs Protection Camp. And of course, in Nottinghamshire, I'm in the county where the police there refuse to investigate the accusations of systemic child abuse within the Nottingham care system, preferring instead to simply incarcerate in solitary confinement anybody who makes these wild accusations without any investigation. Sadly, we, those people watching here in the UK, we live in a beautiful country that is ruled by a very, very sick establishment. Those who believe themselves to be an elite, but in fact they are little more than parasites. And why do they do this? Because we, the collective we, allow them to do it. And at AV9 this weekend, one of the things that I hope that has come out of not just the formal presentations, but also the informal discussions that have occurred throughout the weekend, is that we find ways to go back out into our communities to raise awareness of what's really going on and do whatever it is that we need to do to bring about the changes that we know we all need to see. And this has never been more important than now, because with fracking, we've had the opportunity to just keep kicking the can down the road, and the longer we can delay them actually getting the wells pressured up, then the less likelihood is that there's going to be any viability for it, and they hopefully will just pack up and go home, Jim. We have 5G, and this is being rolled out not just in the UK, but globally. And increasingly the scientific community, those who have humanity's best interests genuinely at heart, are raising awareness of the frequencies that are going to be used for 5G. This is not 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G, and then the next generation. This is a completely different technology. Phased array electromagnetic frequencies, literally providing the establishment with 3D radar across communities right throughout the UK. This, coupled with the LED street lighting, which is already causing nosebleeds, headaches, and according to Mark Steele, miscarriages at almost full term in his hometown of Gateshead, which is a trial centre for not just the LED street lighting, but also 5G. And there are local authorities around the country who are putting their hands up and saying, oh yeah, give us the money, we'll be a 5G test bed, one of which is the Isle of Wight. And I know that there are some prominent residents of the Isle of Wight, so this is an opportunity for those prominent residents to actually make a real difference by getting into the front line and raising awareness of this and stopping this, because if 5G rolls out in 2020 or very shortly after, then we're going to find that actually we are living inside battlefield technology, military technology that is proven to be effective on the battlefield where regulatory control is non-existent. And this technology now being rolled out into the wider community. The precautionary principle is completely eradicated. It's just a case of let's do whatever it is we need to do to further the interests of the corporatocracy. And the reason that they're doing this is because they know fine well that within 10 to 15 years, with automation, with artificial intelligence, with transhumanism, they will not need anything like the number of people that currently reside in the supposed developed nations. And if they happen to just die of cancer or get early dementia and then get onto one of the care pathways, which, as we've seen recently with the baby Alfie case, is little more than euthanasia, state-sponsored euthanasia. And of course, there are those who say, well, this is just all rampant conspiracy. But of course, that is the term that is used to simply try to shut down any research. It's intended to keep people in cognitive dissonance until it's too late. So the bottom line is that the future is very much in our hands. And on Sunday night of AV9, we had a debate. And the motion of the debate was this House believes that humanity is on the cusp of mass extinction. And the person proposing the motion was a 14-year-old girl from the Isle of Man who made a very moving presentation and rightly recognizing that it is my generation that has let down the youngsters who are starting out at the very front end of their lives, because we've put them behind the 8 ball right from the get-go. But by working cooperatively, cross-generationally, we certainly can bring about those changes. So for all the people that were at AV9, my counsel is don't just rush out there and say, yeah, I'm going to get involved in this, I'm going to get involved in that, we're going to make these changes. Just sit back and let it all sink in. Integrate all that information that you've effectively been bombarded with across the weekend. And then as the spring moves into summer, then at that point maybe it will start to fall into place as to, you know, where you can bring your skills, your expertise and your commitment to whatever particular case you choose, but pick something. And then we will shut this parasitic agenda down, and hopefully we will be working collectively and cooperatively towards providing an environment in which humanity can thrive as opposed to live in corporate slavery. So thanks for joining me this morning. I'll be back in a field somewhere tomorrow morning at 8:30. You guys have a good day.